Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com.
Love pets, but hate the heartbreak of overpopulation? The Animal Alliance is here to help. Our spay and neuter programs aim to reduce the number of homeless pets. Visit theanimalalliance.org to support our compassionate mission.
Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and today we have another incredible guest from out east. I love this place, New Jersey, Philly, New York area. It's a wonderful place to communicate the way I like to communicate, straightforward, very sarcastic, but don't read sarcasm. That's just my type of person. They all get offended about people being sarcastic, but they're the most sarcastic people I know. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if they all get offended, but it's quite
tough skin in the Northeast, baby. Tough skin.
Yeah, I love it. So his name is Evan Marks, and he's been doing a ton of stuff over his lifetime. Has 2 beautiful girls that he's raising. He said they're off at summer camp. That's his tech team, making sure that he stays on the straight and narrow for technology. But he built his career on Wall Street, basically helping other people become wealthy. And then he decided, hey, what if he went into starting working on mindset coaching to help other people still become their best self, but then also maybe give himself a little bit piece of the action on the side. So I'm excited to have this conversation. Evan, go for it and let us know more of your story. How did you get to where you are? And then let's dive into some of the biggest mindset hurdles that people are experiencing that you help them with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Sam, thank you for having me. That's one. And it's a pleasure to be here. Like you introduced, my name is Evan Marks. I'm the founder and CEO of the M1 Performance Group, which is a mental performance coaching group. But way before that, I started my career on Wall Street. I went to University of Pennsylvania, and that was a pure incubator for Wall Street. I didn't grow up with much money. I was raised by a single mother. I have an identical twin. I had an older brother who was handicapped. And growing up, we were a team. It wasn't I wouldn't call it a dysfunctional family, even though it was just a mother. But we worked as a team always. We survived and we thrived that way. You know, growing up, I didn't know what other people had. I thought I had it all. I didn't realize that people didn't work at 12 years old. I didn't realize that everybody had responsibilities at 12 and 13 that we had. But I think my mother did a dynamite job of making sure we felt loved, supported, and that we could do anything. So fast forward, I went to University of Pennsylvania with my twin brother, and everybody was Wall Street. You know, growing up with not much money, I didn't even know what Wall Street was, but we were athletes. And we knew if there was a competitive environment, why not do it? 25 years later, I'm managing money on a hedge fund level. I was a partner, but I knew something was wrong. I never wanted to do this. I always wanted a teaching coach, but the money was good. The atmosphere was electric. But there was something missing, Sam, and I knew it. And I told my wife once, and it was 2017, and I thought I had a heart attack, but actually it mimicked a heart attack. I had a massive panic attack out of nowhere. And I had to make a decision. Either stay in this, in my eyes, was a soulless profession of me never being able to do what I was meant to do, which was coaching. I had the opportunity out of nowhere to join a lady who was a coach of mine, to join her coaching team. I went back to school, and 6 months later, I'm coaching Jimmy Johnson and his Pickford team at Hendrick Motorsports. You know, when we look back and we discuss who we want to be, I know what fulfillment feels like now. I thought money, bigger things, bigger houses, cars, trips was what fulfillment was, but it's not. I think you said in your opener, or right before we started this podcast, to me, fulfillment is having the ability to serve others and making a profound effect on people, communities, cultures is what fills my tank every day. And I am beyond grateful to have this opportunity to live this life. I wake up every morning saying, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on this podcast, but I fucking will. I can't fucking believe I get to do this. I get to educate myself every day. I get to work with incredible individuals who want to get better. And if you saw these people on paper, you're like, why do they need to get better? But I believe overachievers know they don't got it. They're not there yet. But they have this insatiable desire to get better. Now, better in business, better as parents, better as siblings, better in their community. They know that their capability gap is limitless. And that's an incredible place to be. Not that we have to be chasing, but we have the ability to expand as people. And that's what I do. I'm in the product development game of people.
Hey, I agree, and that's a lot of what I do as well. And that's one of the things when I saw your one sheet when you came through. So I love getting. When I first started my podcast, I had to reach out to people. Hey, do you want to be on my show? Do you want to be on my show? And I still do that with targeted people that I really want to interview. But now I get offers almost every day, more than I could possibly interview, of random people who want to be on the show. And that's awesome. But when I find somebody that like, oh, I can have a really good conversation with this person, I'm way more interested in having that person on than all the other people who are just trying to pitch their products, because I'm in it for a different reason, right? We talked about this before, but I'm in it to understand the questions, understand what is guiding the world, and how do we have more people ask these great questions. I do want to go back to just really quickly. At what point did your mother become a single mom? Was it as you were growing, like when you became?
My father actually was homeless.
Okay.
So he was married multiple times, multiple children. And I think my mother just wanted us to have this quote unquote support, stable environment, which she created. I mean, she's an amazing woman to do this on her own with a handicapped son, 2 lunatic twins who were just rambunctious as you can imagine. And she kept the ship together. So, like you said in the intro, I have 2 daughters, but I never had a dad. But I knew what I didn't have, I wanted to give. I'm very involved in my kids' lives, coaching with them, affectionate. It means a lot to me. So sometimes when people say, that's a shame that you didn't have a father figure consistently in your life, I'm like, well, I guess it is. However, it became a role model to me. I didn't have that, but these are the things I would want in my life. So I have the opportunity to play it out, to be that father that I would always want. So in a way, was I blessed that I didn't have a dad? I don't know about that, but I know what it would look like and feel like if somebody was in my corner who supported me, listened to me, let me experience things on my own. That's how I wanted to be. And I kind of lived that way. And I find it as one of the greatest responsibilities ever is being a father.
Sure. No, I think that's amazing. So to go back though,
there's a lot to unload there.
I know, but I love it. This is what I love about these conversations is we get to talk to so many people from different walks of life. So your dad was homeless. Did you know your dad? Did you ever meet your dad?
Yeah. My dad was, he was a sick man, but he was March married 2 times in a row. He did a lot of things well, but he was sick. And I think in that era where he could have been medicated, He could have done certain things, but he was fighting mental illness. He provided for us for a bit of time, but he was sick. Right. You know, looking back, you know, he passed away probably 18 years ago or 15, 18, I don't even know. And it's a shame. I wish I could have helped him now, knowing what I know. But I don't know if he wanted to be helped either. So that's a very difficult thing.
Sure.
But my mother really stepped in to make sure that we were surrounded by incredible fathers, good role models of the things that we could actually witness, experience, and feel that love. So she did a phenomenal job. So it's very difficult. But however, can I say, but however? I don't know if you can say that. Mm-hmm. However, we learned a lot. You know, I'm very fortunate to have an identical twin brother who's been by my side forever. We speak every other day, and he lives in Sydney, Australia. I was just in Australia 3 days ago with him. So I'm very fortunate to have an incredible family. Even though my older brother passed away a couple of years ago, he didn't experience the life my brother and I have. But he was still my older brother. And I remember one thing he told me, and it sticks with me to this day. He had nothing. Nothing. He didn't have the exposure my brother and I had. But he told me one day, Ev, you better have gratitude in your attitude. You better be grateful for what you have and take advantage of it. So when you talk about like families that some seem dysfunctional, there are so many things you can take out that you can benefit from. We can either focus on a victimhood mentality, or we could say, this is what happened, right? I don't dismiss trauma. It's real. But it comes to a point where when we acknowledge that that's good, it's healthy, it's necessary. But if we live in it, it's our problem now. So we all have a choice to make. Do I want to live in victimhood, or do I want to move on? And that's a personal choice. Is it easy? No. Is it challenging? Yes. But we all have that choice.
Mm-hmm. No, you're exactly
for all
right.
of us. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating about your story is just the series of events that happens. I think gratitude is for me, gratitude and love are like the pinnacle of emotions. Lots of people, well, I shouldn't say lots of people. There are people with differing opinions who like or dislike the words that are used, but I think that's huge to understand growing up. What does that look like? One follow-up question here, just because I have many clients who end up going through a divorce, trying to be a single mom. I know that wasn't exactly your scenario, but something you did mention, I think is applicable to everybody. My parents, they've been married for, 40 plus years at this point. And my dad worked a lot. My mom primarily was a stay-at-home mom. And even in that scenario, I think this is a truth. It's a truism across the board. Now, it's ideal that we have a father in our life, like my dad was in my life, and I learned a lot from him. But just like most teenagers, there's a lot of teenagers, myself included, who are like, yeah, I'm not going to listen to my parents, right? We get that stage of life where it's like, yeah, I don't care how cool you are. I'm not listening to you. So I think that there's a need in society to have, like, as a good part of what I think what I respect about my dad the most is recognizing that I needed another mentor. You know, part of what I'm hearing in your story that your mom did is recognizing that you needed good role models. And I think that
Absolutely.
I'm going to say back in the day, because I don't see it happen as often now, but in the community setting, there was a way for that to happen. Like the village raised the child rather than the family raising the child. And there was a way for the neighbor men or women or whatever to be involved and have that role in the community's children's lives.
Find it heartbreaking to see so many homeless pets? The Animal Alliance agrees. That's why we're spaying and neutering to reduce overpopulation out of compassion. Visit theanimalalliance.org to help us save some heartbreak.
And so I'm just curious, how did if you were speaking to a single mom right now who's kind of going through this, they don't really love the influence of their ex-spouse, which is kind of why they actually got divorced, is because they don't think that that spouse is a great influence on their children, specifically their sons. And they want to provide a good role model. They're not necessarily looking to get married or anything. They just want to provide better role models. How could they go about implementing something like that to where they are providing really great role models for their children, and matching those up and making sure that their kids are getting those positive role models?
Right. I've never been asked that question in my life, by the way, but I have an answer immediately. When we talk about coaches and sports teams, and whether it's taekwondo or whatever, there is so many. I was having this conversation this morning with somebody. There are avenues to go. We were talking about health and going to gyms and feeling the energy. And when you feel alone, you can join a class. It's like-minded people who want to be healthy. They take their health serious. Those are the type of people you want to be around. So in that question, it's almost like, well, join a youth sports team, go karate, go to a synagogue, a church. There's groups that you can be a part of that aren't necessarily free, but won't break the bank, but you'll put your child in an environment where, if we're talking about men, if you're a single mother, where you can find places where it builds community, it builds a sense of support. It's inclusive. You learn, right? You struggle together. There are so many places, as opposed to sitting there, single mother, single father, saying, woe is me, this is hard. There are places you can go to show your child what this looks like. Like, some of the greatest role models in my life have been my coaches. I was a soccer and lacrosse guy. I had an incredible relationship with these men. When you ask that question, my unconscious now is buzzing, because I was so fortunate to have these people in my life. And they knew we didn't have a dad. My dad didn't go to the games, but they were there for us always. I remember my graduation in high school, my soccer coach was there. Raj Wynn, I'm sending you a shout out. He's the most beautiful man ever. I haven't talked to him in decades, but he had a profound impact on me. Ken Case was our lacrosse coach. Impact. Mm-hmm. You're going to get me teared up soon. But it was very like all these things, and you think of the fathers. It meant a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what. And it can be done. Yeah.
I know it can be done. I'm really grateful that it was done for me, even though I have a father and I still talk to him regularly. And I'm grateful for all the things that he did teach me. He taught me tons and tons of valuable lessons. But I'm fully aware that there was a lot of things that I just wasn't going to listen to him about, even though he was telling me the same things that the other people were telling me. And that's another key factor here is it's a thing that I'm looking for right now in my life, is like, who do I want my sons? I got two sons, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. Like, who do I want them to be mentored by? Who do I want to proverbially send them away for the summer for 3 months to go spend time with this other man, so that they can see and kind of speak life into them, tell them how great they are. Also say, look, here's the things that your dad is teaching you. This is why he's doing what he's doing. Yeah, he seems like a little bit hard of ass, but he's doing it because he wants you to grow. He believes in you. He sees these things. And I'm really grateful that there was a man in my life. His name is Paul Venable, and he lived down the street, and he would come at 5 a.m, wake us up, and we would go on these walks for 2 hours around farmland, Idaho, nothing. But it was a lot of mentorship, and we were homeschooled. He worked from home, so I would show up at his office, just like my office here, and he'd be doing his meetings. Worked for Novell and Dell, and it's this tech guy, and I would just sit there for hours, and we would just talk and talk and talk. And I'm so grateful that my parents allowed that to happen. and that he was willing
thing
to take on that role. And I think, how do we create that type of environment for all of our families? And I think a lot of it comes from, are you even aware that your children need that? A lot of people, I don't think they're so scared to let their children be influenced by somebody else that they never provide anything like that. And then I don't know what the outcome will be in 10, 15 years with a bunch of people who didn't have good role models and also rejected their parents. But I'm really grateful that I got what I got out of it.
I think there's a lot to be said for what you just said. You know, it's as a parent, our children are learning from us, right? So the words we say, the actions that we exhibit, leave something in the brain, a little something. They may not realize it, right? But this is the program that's going on, right? That's why children need to be validated. If you don't validate your child, they will look for validation elsewhere, and that's not a good thing, right? When kids are not able to express themselves, how do you know? You should not feel that. No, kids have to be able to put words to their feelings. Mm-hmm. I have clients now who were never able to do that, and it's a massive fall off from it. As opposed to a mentor, families innately judge because they care about you. They want the best for you. Being a coach or having a mentor is a non-judgmental seat, right? If you're my client, Sam, I want the best for you. But it gives you space to tell me everything because you won't be judged. So we can actually have a truthful conversation of what is really going on. As a parent with my children, I am so intentional of how I communicate with them. I'm not perfect. God knows I'm not. But I want to give them space to feel and give them permission to feel how they're feeling. If you're sad, you're sad. I can't control how you feel. However, as a parent, I can guide you in the best way to behave. Right? It is what it is. I'm allowed to feel sad, frustrated, embarrassed, angry, I can feel whatever I want. However, it is my obligation and my choice not to have that on the field. I want to be able to consciously choose how I behave. My kids are incredible that way. They're able to feel now, and it's the biggest gift I can give them. Give themselves space between that feeling and then to consciously choose how they want to react.
So I'm curious because I literally, right before this podcast, I had this conversation with my son, my oldest son. He's certainly the most emotional out of all of our children.
Okay.
And there's nothing wrong with that. He's quick to get emotional to the point of unreasonable. Like he just pops off and can't do anything. So I'm going to explain what happened. I'm just curious from your expertise. You're much farther along. Your kids are older. You've been doing this more professionally in this capacity than I have. But this is what I did this morning. And I'm just curious what you're like, how could I improve? Honestly, because I'm still trying to figure out how to be a dad. Being a dad is the biggest glaring, like, you don't know what the heck you're doing that you could ever have. And I would say just being a parent in general, like you think you know something and then you're like, I know nothing actually. I don't know how. But so this is what happened. So my two sons, they're playing the Wii, and my oldest son, his thing needed new batteries. So he pushed pause, went to change the batteries. Well, he gets the batteries. He thinks he's all done, but it's still not working. My younger son, who's 5, he just starts moving and he's going to start playing the game without my older son, which is not uncommon. This is just kind of how they interact. And my oldest son, he starts getting like, mom, and you can hear when somebody's about to start crying and they're getting on the edge of ballistic, you can hear it in their voice. It was like, hey, we're not doing that. We're not feeling, it's not that we're not feeling that way, but we're not going to express it that way. You need to calm down right now. We're going to have a conversation. So I engaged in conversation. And in my experience, one of the things that's helped me understand my feelings is to recognize where I'm feeling them in my body and different feelings. Am I feeling rejected? Am I feeling misunderstood? Am I feeling attacked? Like those different types of feelings actually show up at different places in my body.
Automatically, yeah.
Like if I'm feeling something, I might feel something in my chest. Whereas if I'm like really emotional out of positive emotion and I love the emotion, then it's probably going to be in my throat more often, of like I'm choking up, right? So I understand where I'm feeling these things, and once I understand where I'm starting to feel something in my body, now it helps me better address the feeling that I'm having and what it is that is I'm needing to address at the moment. I'll explain another experience as well, but so for me, my way of mentoring my son at this point is like, okay, talk about where are you feeling it? I want to misdirect from the emotion, let him know, hey, look, you're allowed to have an emotion. There's not a problem with having emotion. It's okay to cry. I cry, mom cries, like we all cry sometimes. That's not the problem. But the TV's not more important than your brother. The remote's not more important. Like what's going on outside of the technology, that's not more important than you or our family. And being present and putting people first is really important to me. And so I'm trying to help him teach that, or I'm trying to teach him that, I guess, help him understand that. So what would be 7 years old? Okay. So what would be an effective way to maybe make that situation even better and land better? I know you don't know my son and it's not like you've been coaching him every day, but like, what are some things you've found? Like, how do we help people identify their emotions? Because I think grown men are the same way. Like people who never learned how to manage their emotions, it doesn't matter what age they are. They don't know how to manage their emotions. And we have to teach them as if they're 5, 6, 7 years old, because that's actually the age that they got locked into their trauma that they deal with emotions, unfortunately. So like, I think the question you'll be able to answer, because I don't see it being a wide gap based on my own experience of humans. So I'm just curious, where would you go with that? What questions would you ask me as a parent who's trying to parent my children, and how could maybe I do better?
You know, when we talk to children, we think we're talking intellectually. But remember, emotions begin before intellect, right? So we're trying to rationalize things to somebody who's not rational, right? They don't understand these things. I know 40-year-olds who don't understand this. But what needs to be done in those sorts of situations is, what's your son's name?
Declan.
Declan? Mm-hmm. Great name. Declan, how do you feel right now? And I want, you want him to be able to say, I'm frustrated, I'm angry because my brother's doing this. Okay, you're allowed to feel this way. Let's take a breath, right? So now you want him to know, like, we acknowledge how you feel. We're not minimalizing it. But when he's now able to put words to those feelings, I'm frustrated, I feel rage, whatever it is, it's a huge thing, because now they could actually know how they're feeling. Now the wrong thing to do is don't feel that way. You're not allowed to do that. Then the next step, Sam, is, all right, let's just take a breath. Give him space and say, we have choices here. Declan, how do we want to behave now? Ask him. In the beginning of this thing, it's always questions, right? And remember, when I ask myself a question, and Sam, I do it every day, I'm like, what am I trying to accomplish today? The person asking the question is in the seat of influence. So when we ask self-exploratory questions, all right, Ev, what do you want to do there? It puts me in control. Right? So let's go to Declan. All right, Declan, how do you want to behave? Ask him. Right? So now we put a label to how he feels. We've acknowledged that. We take a breath, bring down, right? It's called self-regulation. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm not saying he's going to be homeostatic, but we get it to a place where his brain's not going bananas. We get it to a certain level. All right, we have a choice, Declan. How do we want to behave? Do we want to act with kindness? Do we want to act calm? How would you like to behave? So now we're asking him a question, right? We're not telling him how to behave. How would you like to behave? You give him a couple of examples. And you just work on that. But the biggest thing you could do is to have your child be able, give him permission to feel and to be able to put words, verbalized, to those. I'm frustrated. Good. Thank you for sharing that with me. What do you want to do with this frustration? As opposed to, you shouldn't feel frustrated. You shouldn't be angry. Because now what happens, like you said, he's 7. he now is not going to be able to regulate his emotions. Just can't put a fucking word to it. He doesn't know what's going on because he's been told not to feel that way. So what happens when he actually feels that way later on in life and he doesn't know how to deal with it? So fast forward when I deal with 45-year-olds who weren't allowed to feel, no crying. No. It becomes fucking Chernobyl. Mm-hmm. Because now we have these incredible emotions. We don't know how to acknowledge or deal with them. Those emotions now go into autopilot, into behavior. So now this whole act is unconscious and we're just surviving. Imagine if we have the ability to teach our children to acknowledge, to verbalize, give yourself space, and to consciously choose a behavior.
So let's go.
How powerful is that?
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. I like what's fascinating is I've learned a lot about how I regulate myself, but because I have learned it mostly unconsciously, in that I've read lots and lots of books. I've done a lot of work on myself. Then the downside to kind of learning it yourself through just like a lot of trial and error and access to multiple different perspectives is the framework to duplicate it to the next person is lost on me a lot of the time. So that's why I like talking to professionals who are like, okay, here's a framework to do it. Like the framework for how I would put it in a checklist. I talked to another guy named Steve Rosenberg, and he's a pilot. Now he's this massive business coach. And it's like, well, how did you do it? Well, he turns everybody's business into a big old checklist. Like everybody gets checklists from him. He recommended I read the book, Checklist Manifesto, phenomenal book. Okay, well, in here, it's like, okay, what's the checklist of regulating emotion? Well, first, labeling the emotion. Let's name it.
Acknowledging.
Yeah, acknowledge, name it, label it, whatever that looks like in your language, but that you have to acknowledge it and say, okay, right? And then take a breath, calm down. How do we want to show up in this moment? What do we want to do with this?
Conscious behavior.
Yeah, conscious behavior. So it's like, okay, so that's the cool part of now we have a framework to discuss this in. And I think that's super helpful. So now let's talk about, we've gone through this initial framework, this initial checklist, and let's hypothetically say, because this is going to happen with kids, teenagers, all of them, they're going to choose what they want to do with this behavior. Sometimes they're going to choose something of what they want to do, which is fine. It's an animalistic, in my opinion. It's the natural part of you. Like, I want to go punch him. Okay, well, how do we say, well, that's actually not, like there's consequences. How do you train the consequences for actions and also say, well, there's certain acceptable behaviors that we're going to allow in our household, and there's certain behaviors that we're not going to allow. So those actually aren't on the table as options. Because at some point, we do have to have strong leadership and strong guidelines to how we're going to behave. You have it in sports. There's actual rules. It's not anybody's fault there's rules, but that's the game, right? There's our games. Okay. So in life, there are games of human interaction. There are rules around this. And especially in my house, right? I create the rules in my house. He can go create the rules in his house when he wants to. But so how do you allow for emotions, have that conversation of asking them how they want to move forward while still having consequences and rules, and how do you communicate that to a 7?
I think, it's how you just said it is a very great starting point. There are consequences. My kids always laugh. They go, I want that. I go, all right, you can do whatever you want, but they go, here comes the but. I said, girls, there's consequences to your actions. There's consequences to my actions.
Ever feel like your heart just can't take seeing so many homeless pets? The Animal Alliance understands your pain. We're on a mission to spay and neuter to reduce overpopulation and prevent the heartache. Visit theanimalalliance.org to support our efforts.
What happens is, I teach something called you have to slow down to speed up. Slowing down doesn't mean taking your foot off the pedal. It means being intentional. Sure. To really build out consciously what you want to do. And the speed up process is the leverage. So if my daughters know, right, because the brain is always predicting. It's a predicting mechanism. How am I going to feel? How am I going to look? How am I going to do this? But in that moment, if my daughters can give themselves space to say, all right, I could yell at little Susie because I'm angry with her, but what am I trying to accomplish here? I mean, this is not easy shit, right? But if we could put the seeds in now to put a little speed bump before behavior, it's a big thing because there are consequences. As adults, we know what that is. As kids, they don't. We want to give them the ability to make the best decisions they can. We don't know if it's the right decision yet, right? Right decisions we know a little later on. Sure. But given the external data environment and our internal data, that's the best way we can make a decision. And the best way to do that is giving yourself space. So if my daughters could understand, right? And we talk about this, girls, not only is it tough to make a good decision, but there's consequences from it. We just have to give ourselves a little space when we make these decisions to think, what are the consequences? But, like anything else, it's a muscle. The more and more repetition, I have a line that says, consistency with evidence builds confidence. Mm-hmm. The more we do it, the more intentional we are about building these foundations for our children and ourselves, the better we become. My goal is always, I want my kids to be socially acceptable, right? I want them as game time players. They can act like little shitheads every once in a while in this house, but when they go outside, I want them to be respectful and handle themselves appropriately. And they do, and I'm very proud of them. I'm not saying they're perfect children because they're not.
Sure.
But we work on this stuff religiously because I know that doing what I do for a living, this is the programming part. I want them to be advocates for themselves. I want them to have a voice. I want them to be able to sit back and think and sit in a pocket for a second, analyze what's going on and make a decision. These are all important things. It doesn't happen overnight, but my wife and I have to be on the same page in how we deliver this message to them. We have to be, because they're going to be young women, and I want them to have this sense of self, that they know how to control themselves. They know how to choose right and wrong. That's all we want as parents. Mm-hmm. We want to give them the ability to think and make good choices.
I love it. Man, I have this cool idea.
And what happens is, and I'll take it a step further, Sam, you start to create an atmosphere, a society where people respect each other, because at the end of the day, there are three basic human needs: to feel important, to feel supported, and to feel listened to, heard. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And a lot of that happens if we can make the unconscious conscious and give ourselves space. We all get triggered. But I can't control how I feel. I can't. But I'll fucking tell you this: nobody's affecting my behavior. Yeah. You could affect me emotionally. People do. I might set my 11-year-old get me sometimes, but I have to understand through this mental structure and script how to handle myself. I have to.
Yeah.
What do I need to do here?
Well, I think that's a good, one of the questions that you said in there that we've kind of passed over a little bit, but the question of what am I trying to accomplish is so crucial. And that in general, if everybody in life, again, this is if we're pulling out of this direct conversation, pulling back to the clouds a little bit, that's the purpose of this podcast. What are the few questions, not a ton, there's going to be one or two out of every one of these FaceTimes, what do we call this? Zoom calls, whatever.
Zoom calls.
Podcast that could be life-changing for you. that question, what am I trying to accomplish? If you went to every area of your life, ask that about your relationship with your spouse. What am I trying to accomplish here? I mean, am I just like, did I get married and have kids just to like make it to the end of life and not be alone? Like, is that all I'm trying to accomplish? Or am I trying to accomplish like a beautiful, blossoming, amazing relationship? What am I trying to accomplish with my kids? Am I just trying to like wait until they're 18 so I can kick them out? Or am I trying to develop functioning humans that are going to provide value to society? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? When you get in the car and you're driving to work and somebody cuts you off and you ask, hey, what am I trying to accomplish? Are you trying to accomplish being right today? Or are you trying to accomplish getting safely home to your family? Like, what the heck are you trying to accomplish? That is such a powerful question.
It's a great question.
Gets overlooked in this grand scheme of all of these checklists. We could wipe the checklist off.
But you know what it is, though, Sam? When we ask these self-exploratory questions, we turn on the conscious, we flip the consciousness, right? What am I trying to accomplish? It makes you stop for a second and think.
Yeah.
You're not unconsciously, what do I need to do here? You're conscious.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That is where leverage comes from. Because we can build off that. We can make it consistent, right? We can build new experiences off this consciousness level. That's big. We do things unconsciously. We don't know what the fuck we're doing. And how do you able to grow from there? You can't.
Yeah. That's amazing. Like that, I'm going to take that one question. I'm so grateful we did this podcast. I have so many more questions for you. We're not going to get to all of them. I do have like one more follow-up question. But man, that one question, I'm so glad we narrowed this down.
I'm glad it resonated, my friend.
Yeah, no, that's the best question out of this whole thing. There was a lot of good questions, but that one's the best one. I wanted to just highlight a few things that you mentioned about kind of your journey and then ask a follow-up question here. So when you get to school, one, you and your brother, you're competitive. You didn't know other people had a different life. You just got on with it. You were happy. You were grateful for your surroundings. You get to this school, and because everybody else is at this school going into stocks and wherever the Wall Street, whatever. So because everybody else is going there, then you just like, okay, I can be competitive. I can develop myself. This is great. It doesn't matter what the catalyst is. This is a big thing that people don't understand. They're so busy trying to follow their passion all the time that they don't ever go and just develop themselves in any one area. Like, just choose an area and go develop yourself. That being said, you get to the top of this career and you realize that yes, the environment impacted you. Yes, you were competitive. You got to explore and develop your competitiveness and become the best, become a partner. You won at somebody else's game. And this is where the question would have been really good to ask, what am I trying to accomplish? It would have been good to ask that in college. Now, it's possible, it's very possible, probable actually, that at the time, he still would have went that direction, because at that point in his life, maybe he was trying to just be accomplished, to go win at something, right? And now, later on in his life, he has this panic attack, and it's like, oh, because this is where we get into the conscious, unconscious conversation again. This is personal belief, right? I believe that as an energy force of the world, we're all intimately connected. And that as the God, we're all trying to express ourselves. And your mission from the energy force could change, okay? And there's a point where your mission in one area has been done, and it seems out of blindsight because the consciousness, the subconscious, which is conscious, says, okay, it's time to redirect. And so you start feeling like an out-of-body experience doing something that before you felt good doing. Now it's like, that's not me anymore. I'm not supposed to be here anymore. I'm living somebody else's life now. What the heck's going on? And it comes back into consciousness, and we say, okay, we need to move and transition. So this panic attack serves as a catalyst for you to recognize, this is not what I want to be doing anymore. There's something more out there. I want to go back and coach. I want to help this other person. But you glossed over this in your journey, and I want to just highlight it and ask you the question. When did you get, and I know this might sound silly, but when did you get your first coach? And what I mean by first coach, obviously you had sports coaches and things, but you had a coach in your career that you were already doing that. What was the stimulus in the career of Wall Street that said, man, I need to go get a coach? Because
I'm going to back up a little bit here.
Go for it.
I got recruited to play lacrosse. I was getting shot up with cortisone before I went to Penn. My knees were gone. So I blew my knees out twice when I was at Penn. And I only played 6 games. So my identity as a student athlete was fucking over. My twin brother went to Penn with me. He was captain 2 times. It destroyed me. So here I am. I'm just Evan Marks. I'm not this athlete anymore. It took me 20 years to get over that because I didn't want to let people know how hurt I was. This goes back to your conversation with your son. I wasn't fucking showing anybody the pain I was in. The pain, I mean, massive amounts of pain. And when I went to Wall Street, it was out of anger. I'm going to prove myself to everybody. And it wasn't about trading anymore because I didn't get validated for who I was. So along this journey, I knew what I was going through, this torture. And it was real torture. Being somebody that I was trying to prove, it was awful. But I wouldn't go seek help because it was weak. I didn't realize this. You know, my first coach was always get bigger, get stronger, do more work, make more money. But I knew underneath there was this kid fucking struggling, not wanting to be here. I'd go big money, give it all back because I didn't fucking want it. Like there was self-sabotaging going on, but I wasn't willing to go there. The resistance was so tremendous that I'm lucky that I had a good career. I'm fucking really lucky that I was able to pick up on it sooner than later. So when I'm a coach now, this is what I've always wanted to do because I know people struggle. People want to be listened to. People have real pain. Now, was my trauma of blowing my knees out twice worse than some? I don't give a shit. This is my experience, right? I'm not going to minimize what happened to me. If something happened to somebody else that's graver, I feel for you. I empathize with you. But I still have to respect what I was going through. And I didn't let myself do that, Sam, until years later that I was trying to validate myself without this internal validation. It was never good. And I got lucky at the end to meet a therapist coach who I still work with, who opened my eyes. And it's been life-changing because even though it's a cliche, the truth will set you free as long as it's in the right hands.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a key thing is going back to this panic attack nature. And I don't know when the panic attack happened timeline-wise.
46 years old. 46.
Yeah. But what I mean is like, when did it happen from a perspective of you're competitive, you're crushing it, and then you get this therapist coach. How soon after you get the therapist coach do you have the panic attack? And the reason that's important is
it's a great question.
So many people, they think, oh, I'm this way. It's like, you're that way. People think change takes time. People think transformation takes time. The truth is transformation happens in a millisecond. It literally happens in the millisecond that you see your life from a different perspective. Then there's the time of grappling with it and deconstructing all of your habits and your behaviors that you've built to maintain your self-concept, but you know in an instant that you need to change and that your perspective, you can't unsee that. That's where the panic attack happen, is you see something different about yourself than you ever knew, or you finally get seen by somebody for the deep part of yourself that you didn't think anybody ever wanted to see, cared about, or anything. And you finally be seen by somebody, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm allowed to now see this publicly. And that creates the biggest crises in people's lives. Life crisis, religious crisis, doesn't matter the crisis. It creates the biggest crises. And then the panic attacks, heart attacks, this stuff happens all the time because people now have to cognitive dissonance, deal with who they could be and they're deep down who they want to be versus the whole world and what they expect of them. We do not have time to talk about this. We need.
But now you're fucking treading on the holy land of regret.
I know.
Because remember, regret, and it's not rejection, is the strongest feeling of it all, is regret. So I think that panic attack, and it's a great question you asked, I think that had a pretty bow regret around it, that this is my life. I'm going to finish it unfulfilled. And I think that's what affected me. And it was a wake-up call.
Okay,
so we can go on for hours on this.
I want to have another conversation with you if you're open to it, because I want to know two things. I want to dig into the regret. I want to dig into the panic attack and like what happened after that. I'm making notes here.
But I want to say something though, Sam.
Okay.
And I think it's extremely important. We all have the ability to change. One, we have to want to. Two, we have to be patient with our progress, right? Because it then starts a ripple effect, which causes this internal momentum. We have to be kind to ourselves, but kindness without action will feel like an excuse. We have to ask ourselves questions. What am I trying to accomplish? How do I want to be? Who do I want to be? You know, I wrote this post. You could read 900 self-help books. It means shit. Because the first self-help book is almost similar to the 60th. And it doesn't happen in the 13th chapter. It takes effort. It takes being intentional to change. And it only has to start small. Like my clients take cold showers, right? Because I want to know they can change their behavior besides the neurological benefits. But imagine you go to bed 15 minutes earlier. Imagine that you put down that candy bar and you make a choice. You know what? I'm going to have a piece of fruit. Don't think that's not fucking inconsequential. It's a shift in your mind. It's a behavior. It's a conscious choice. Maybe we can't put a dollar sign on that. However, you do this consistently, and you can call me up in 6 months and say to me, Ev, how the fuck did I get here? You will be blown away by what you're capable of.
1,000%. This is awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure talking to you, brother.
We need to get another one on the schedule.
Absolutely.
This is part one. Yeah, this is part one. But next time, so you're going to want to anticipate this next one. But we're going to talk about regret. We're going to talk about multiple things. I don't know how old your kids were when this, but I want to know your wife's side of the story. Because this is a thing. You get married with one set of trauma that you don't tell anybody, and then you switch overnight. That's its own issue. And your partner, your life partner who's behind you all the way, trusts you, loves you, cares about you. That's a freaking break your neck type of whirlwind for some people. And they have to then adjust as well. That's an adjustment thing. And maybe they wanted it the whole time, but maybe they didn't.
Tell my wife, I go, you didn't read the whole resume, pal. There's a lot of shit coming with me.
Yeah. No, seriously. So like, we're going to find out what was that like in that experience. The kids, how do you transition? Your kids believe one thing about you, and then you transition to this totally different self, and how you communicate and why you communicate. All these things that you have to then, you're not just deconstructing your own reality, you're deconstructing all the contracts, implied contracts, written contracts, everything that you have with everybody in your life. You're going to become a different person. Some people aren't going to like the new person. How do you exit those contracts? And then,
you know what though, Sam, can I say this?
Yeah, you can.
This doesn't have to be a punishment. This should be rewarding.
Absolutely.
Right? We have to look at it like me putting this down to get better. Discipline is freedom. We have to look at it from a different angle, saying, I'm doing this is rewarding to me. This is not a rise and grind. Fuck that. Rise and reward. Mm-hmm. I get to get better. I can choose better behaviors. I'm capable of being incredible. It gives you chills. Like, we have that. We just got to be able to slow down in order to speed up. Slow down intentionally.
Yeah.
It's worth the trip.
That's amazing. This was such a good podcast. Okay, I've got to go, but thank you guys so much for joining us on the Fuel Your Legacy show. Last thing, if somebody just from this, like, man, I want to be coached by Evan, I want to at least be engaging in his work, where's the best place to connect with you?
So I have a website. It's called M1 Performance Group. And for this podcast, my team to put together a call to action. So it's called the M1 Mental Model. And there's a questionnaire about coaching. And there's actually a part, if you want to get a hold of me for a discovery call, it's on this page. It's m1performancegroup.com/FYL/. So you can find me there. I'm on LinkedIn. You can see me talking and all that stuff. I'm on Instagram. And I have a discovery button on my website.
Awesome.
At m1performancegroup.com.
Love it. Thank you so much. And it
was a pleasure, brother.
Yeah. Catch you guys next
time. We're doing
time.
this again, no doubt.
Absolutely.
All right, my brother. Have a great weekend. Have a great 4th of July.
Yep, you too.
Do you wish there was fewer pets in shelters tugging at your heartstrings? The Animal Alliance is on it. We're spaying and neutering to ensure fewer pets are born into a life of suffering. Visit the Animal Alliance to help us save our bleeding hearts.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.